Today we're going to talk about why work feels so unrewarding and why you feel like you're under so much stress. My name's Luke and this is Do Less Better. We all have so few hours in the day and work is taking more and more of those hours. Everything at work is asking for you to do more and do more, yet it doesn't feel like you're achieving anymore and there's just a constant increase in pressure. Work doesn't have to be hours of meaningless, mundane effort, but that requires skill from you as a leader to give work that is challenging, interesting, has context, and allows people to take ownership of what they're doing. Today we're going to talk about why more work doesn't necessarily translate to good work or better work, and what approaches we can take to help you and your team become more productive and have a more rewarding work life. The first thing we want to acknowledge is that being a leader is really, really difficult, and you're probably not trained to be a leader. You might have got that role as a promotion, and now you're in a situation where you've got to lead a team of people, and it's a challenge. And perhaps you've got a leader yourself that has been promoted into a role that they may not be totally comfortable with. And it's not their fault. I think most people are good people and they try to do the best they can. But leadership is a real skill. And if we don't teach it and train it and practice it, we don't improve upon it. Oftentimes people get promoted based on hard skills, operational things, stuff you can quantify. However, the soft skills are what's really important. And that's why when we lose those soft skills, work starts to feel worse and worse. Having grown up playing a lot of sports, it became a shock to me when I entered the professional world where there's a lot of talk about teamwork and team skills, but none of the actual deployment of those processes to create good quality teams. There is a desire for high-performing teams, yet none of the work around actually building them. In the sports world, there are a lot of stories of less talented individuals who work well as a team beating highly skilled individuals that don't work well as a team. The key to all that is to figure out not what they're doing, but what they're not doing. A high-performing team is really efficient at doing less better. It's about doing the things that you need to do really, really, really well. This means giving people a chance to stretch themselves, to try new things, to put themselves in uncomfortable situations so that they learn and grow. In this process, you also as a leader get to see what they're capable of, where their resilience is, and where they can be put in the future to help, again, grow and learn and improve. One of the most frustrating and demoralizing parts of work is doing work that we all know is meaningless. It is pointless work, it is work just to do work, and it doesn't feel like you're achieving anything or contributing something in a meaningful way. And no one wants to talk about it, and no one wants to admit it. It never gets brought up, and people just continue to do something which makes them lose their joy for being at work. In a rewarding work environment, the first thing to do is to figure out what should be done. If you're lucky enough to be in an organization with a well-articulated and implemented strategy, this should be simple. You should be able to refer back to that and you should know what needs to be done at all times. This might not be the case for you, so we need to create a model which can help figure out what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. A way to assess work to figure out what is going to be meaningful and rewarding is to figure out, is this piece of work important? And is this work urgent? This idea of urgent versus important is an idea that's now known as the Eisenhower Matrix. This matrix is named after President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He never referenced the actual matrix, but the idea of it comes from a speech he gave in 1954 at Northwestern University. In the speech he said, "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." So what does this mean for your team? And how can you use this matrix to make your work life more meaningful and rewarding? The Eisenhower Matrix just has two axes, important and urgent. This allows us to break the matrix up into 4 sections. Important and urgent, important unurgent, unimportant urgent, and unimportant unurgent. This matrix allows us to put work relative to each other to figure out what to do, to make a decision. The word decide comes from the Latin to cut. It should be painful. It should be brutal. Not everything can be important and not everything can be urgent. And if in your organization everything is important and urgent, then your organization is run very poorly and I would run away. Important and urgent. This feels like it's going to be the place you want to be, but actually this place will kill you over time. This is a crisis. You should not be in this space very often. You should be in here once, maybe twice a year. If you are constantly here, this is a problem, and your organization doesn't know what to do, and you should look for a new job. But since we're here, this work still needs to get done. And it doesn't mean that you have to do the work specifically, you just have to think through the work and then delegate it appropriately. Not important and urgent. This will kill you. This will suck the joy out of your life. All of these unimportant pieces of work that don't do anything, they're not meaningful, they don't add any value, they don't do anything which makes you feel good about yourself, but they're all urgent, so you have to get them done, and there's pressure on you to do this meaningless task. This place is horrible. You don't want to be here. These are the tasks that you want to be allocating to your team members. Again, you want to figure out what needs to be done, and then you want to give tasks to people so that they're going to be learning, growing, doing something more difficult than what they're used to, trying new things, and it's a way to upskill all of your team. So this work still has to get done, but you shouldn't be the one that is constantly having to do it. This is a chance for you to give your team members some control over what they do. So you want to make sure that there is clear guidelines of what they are and are not allowed to do. Put them in a box and say, play within this box, be creative as you want. Here's your task, go crazy. The task is not that important, so there's no huge challenge if they don't do great on it, but it also gives them a chance to upskill. The other thing is that if you know how to solve the task, you want to give that task to the lowest possible person. So the lowest possible person in your organization should get the highest possible responsibility. That means you don't give a senior executive the toilet paper shopping, so they have to go out and shop for toilet paper. But also, you don't want to give the new intern the budget for the whole company. You want to give people tasks that will challenge and expand them, but also with enough context so they'll be able to do a good job. Not important and not urgent. The most common approach for this is to get rid of these tasks, but this is a little short-sighted. So this work is not important and it's not urgent. However, it might be required at some point. So what you want to do is not delete these things altogether, but it is to reduce the number of times they happen and seeing what is the lowest amount of work you can put in to make these still relevant. If you have a meeting every day, maybe reduce that to every second day or every third day or once a week. If you look at experienced basketball players, they don't move around a lot. They're very, very efficient with emotion and time and space. Where younger players just running all over the place, just using energy just because they feel like they need to use energy. So one of the best ways to become more efficient is to stop doing things which produce no outcome or no reward. And so this is why we're trying to figure out what is the least amount of work we can do to achieve the outcomes that we want. So before deleting these things, we want to figure out, is it still necessary at some point, and can we automate it away? Or what is the least amount of work we can do to make sure that this is still going to be done in case it is required? James Clear in his book Atomic Habits talks about creating time assets, which is you put in some time to set up something that works continuously, and in the future you don't have to use any time to get the results. So in these tasks which are not important and not urgent, oftentimes you want to see if you can set up some automated process so that you get the report you need at the time you desire, but you don't actually have to put any effort in to get those results. Important and not urgent. This is where you want to live. This is the money shot. This is the sweet spot. This is where all the magic happens. Ideally, you've got all the other work under control, and then you can actually spend time thinking deeply about how do you solve problems in a holistic way. Rather than dealing with the problem which is right here, you want to understand the upstream and downstream effects to make sure that the whole process is done well. Again, you might not be the one implementing the task, but you'll need to think through the whole solution. You need to figure out what expertise do you have, what expertise do you not have that you need to ask for help for, and then you want to think about what the solution should entail, and then you potentially will pass that off and delegate that to someone who's going to actually complete the process. Important and urgent are terms that are relative to you. So your Eisenhower Matrix is going to look different from your team members. As you delegate tasks to them, the importance of those things will change relative to who they are and where they are in the organization. But the key for all of this is to get to those important and non-urgent tasks so you can do deep thinking. The deep thinking is where all the value is going to come from. And so you can then solve systemic issues rather than dealing with some little problem. The other thing why this is beneficial and will help create a more meaningful work environment is that you'll be able to give tasks to people who can then also delve into them and to feel like they're contributing to solving problems rather than just being told, hey, do this thing in this way, in this order, for this time. Because that kills people because they have no ownership of the process, and then when things fail, they're responsible for the outcome, yet they're not responsible for the process, which just makes it horrible. Work is always more fun when you're doing something which you can see is contributing to something larger than yourself, part of the team, part of the organization, something that you can see is bigger than what you're doing individually. But again, this is a challenge, and as a leader, this is where you add the most value, and I believe you can do it. My name's Luke, and this has been Do Less Better. And if you want to be passive aggressive, send this to your boss.